And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. In case you just missed it, Rusty Raptors has officially just announced his squad for the Rugby Championship, more importantly for the first leg of the Rugby Championship, the Australia leg. And it is a very interesting squad. It is a very interesting selection of players, 33-man squad that will travel over to Australia. There are call-ups, there are people who have been dropped, for example, in inverted commas, and lots of injuries as well to deal with. So an interesting squad to go through. I mean, we're basically looking at the squad, looking at players who've been called up, for example, players who are injured, and sort of where the selection might go. So over the rest of the week, we'll kind of be picking apart the squad, won't we? We'll be putting a bit of an early prediction on the Australia team, for example, and or team for Australia rather, and how we might rotate the squad. Players who maybe might be on the way out, for example. We'll do a bit of a winners and losers video as well on the Springbok squad itself, and which players our stocks have really risen, which players stocks have fallen, and where the opportunities really lie during the Rugby Championship as well. So I'll put the squad up on a bit. So we've got two graphics in forwards and backs. In fact, I might actually throw one together with all of them, to be fair, which might actually be a bit easier. So let me maybe just quickly sort that out. And then we'll get stuck into it, shall we? Because, yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Because I think the main thing to talk about is the amount of injuries we've got. And, yes, I think a lot of the players mentioned on the injury list, I don't think necessarily all of them would be involved in the squad if they were fit. But it's still a something to consider, because it sort of shows you who's on the block radar, really, and which players they are actively monitoring and actively looking at bringing in. So the fact that, for example, a Herschel Yankees is listed in the injury list shows you that he is not being considered because of injury, as opposed to not being considered because he's not on the radar. Didn't mention Cameron Honecourt, for example, in the release, which I imagine is a bit of an oversight. Because it'd be weird if he is available and they don't call him up, because I think they really do rate him. But maybe he is, and they're just not going to bring him up for the Australia leg. Although, having said that, if you were going to bring him up for one of the legs there, I think this would have been an opportunity for him. But very, very interesting. And let's have a look at it, shall we? So that is the squad. Forwards on the left, backs on the right. And the big, obviously some big news as well, is that Kolisi is captaining. So he's been confirmed as the captain for the Rugby Championship. So no change of captaincy just yet, which we kind of sort of thought it would be the case. But we were sort of waiting a bit for confirmation. Because Rusty Rasmus, I suppose, hasn't really done this yet. But when I asked him about the captaincy issue, he said that they would announce a permanent captain. He hasn't done that, but he's continued to announce Kolisi as the captain. So one imagines the case of he's kind of captain until he's not, which obviously sounds pretty obvious. But I think I don't think there's necessarily going to be a big Kolisi is the captain. It's going to be a case of Kolisi is the captain for now, and then if we need to make that change, then they will announce a big permanent captain. For example, and I think that he'll be rotated and the opportunities people will captain over the next few months. So let's see how things go. First things first, I'm going to put a poll in the comments saying, are you happy with the squad? Question mark. Simple yes and no. Before we go any further, people, please do like the video. We've got over 50 people in the chat, and the more times you guys like the video, the more people we get into the chat, the more different views we get, the more the show really starts to flow. Because at the end of the day, it's an interaction show. There's no interaction with you guys, it becomes a bit of a boring show. So that's the main thing. I want to know what your opinion is of that squad, and you can very, very easily support the channel by doing absolutely nothing but it's liking the video. So please, let's get that likes up to at least 20, 30 likes. Come on, people. You can do better than that. Let's get into the side, shall we? Because I'm already seeing some interesting comments in the comment section. So let's go through the forwards, shall we? The big news for me, Dixon being backed over there. The surprise selection, two surprise selections in the squad, is Ruan and Elrigh Louw. Elrigh Louw, who's obviously suddenly catapulted himself back into the mix, the genuine mix, as opposed to kind of being on a fringe player. He played over the weekend, but wasn't involved in the Ireland at all.
and it was actually a standby, to be fair. So he's been drafted back in the squad last week, and he's been retained in the squad. So that sort of shows you that obviously whatever he's been doing has impressed the Box squad, and they were obviously very chuffed with what they saw from him on Saturday, and he's getting rewarded for that. And that's a good thing to see, because you want to see players who come back, play well, and get rewarded. And he's done exactly that. Ruan as well. For me, that's probably the most surprising selection. I've got a feel for Ruben van Heerden. I think that he's had such a good season. For me, is a really good all-round player. You know, I think he brings a lot of physicality, and I think that he's a good line-out jumper, and he was also not old. You know, so he is very much a player for the now and future. You know, because he's 26 years old. He's coming into his prime. Turns 27 this year, so he'll be 30 at the next World Cup. 120 kgs, 2 meters tall. I don't see why he's not been given the backing. So that's interesting. Before we go any further, by the way, let me actually just go through the injuries, but before we get too into sort of reading too much into some of the players that aren't on that list. So from a lock perspective, Jean Claire, Louw, Diago, Franco Moss, all ruled out. 2 5 locks, 1 4 lock, which is why Ruan has been brought in. Which is why I mentioned Ruben van Heerden. Steven Kitshoff was set to make a return, but has been ruled out. So has Faf de Klerk, Jan-Hendrik, and Herschel Yankees. Kane Moody's also been ruled out, so obviously that return to play taking a bit longer than expected for Kane Moody. They thought he was going to be ready for the second Irish test, then sort of that they will be ready for Portugal, then sort of said they'll be ready for the Rugby Championship. So whatever the issue is, I don't know if it's maybe a fitness issue in terms of coming back from the injury and not maybe being as fit as he would like to be or needs to be. Mbonambi, we knew, was injured. Dane Willems is continuing his world tour whilst out on injury as well. Jasper Wiese continues to be suspended, and Andre Esthuizen wasn't considered because he's got a pending hearing on the back of that red card over the weekend. So I think the big surprise there, Ruan occurred Elrigh Louw, Jan-Hendrik as well. I'm quite surprised that he's been called up. It's amazing the backing he's getting despite the lack of experience he's got. And I don't talk about that from an age perspective. I'm talking about that from a literal number of minutes in a URC and Champions Cup environment. He's played a lot more Currie Cup. But for example, you look at a Ruan Venter, and let's look at the two of them. Let's actually do a side-by-side comparison. And because Ruan Venter is I think actually younger than Jan-Hendrik, who is 23 years old. Ruan Venter is 21 years old, turned 22 this year. So Ruan Venter is younger than Jan-Hendrik, for example. However, Ruan Venter, and this unfortunately just includes URC and Challenge Cup, doesn't include Currie Cup. But Ruan Venter has played a total of 2,000 minutes for the Lions over the last couple of years. He's into his third season. This was the end of his third season, and has played 42 matches for the Lions, and not to mention his one-off test. If you look at Jan-Hendrik, for example, despite being older, he has played just 29 matches for the Bulls, so 756 minutes. So you've got a Ruan Venter who's a year younger than him, and yet has played almost 3 times the amount of minutes at this level. So that's what I mean by the inexperience for Jan-Hendrik. It's not just an age thing; it's he hasn't been playing at the highest level for a particularly long time. So they obviously see something in him that has got him into that squad. Whether he'll continue to keep that spot, for example, we'll wait and see. But I think that's a very interesting selection. In the back line, I don't think there's too many surprises, to be honest. It's a pretty straightforward selection. Upper left fast continues to get backed, which is good to see. Really back though to provide a bit of experience. Mbonambi, I think, would have been in the squad. Would have been interesting to see if he would have been there ahead of Makazole Mapimpi. That would kind of be my gut feel. And if Faf de Klerk was fit, for example, I'll be interested to see if he would have been backed ahead of Moerat van den Berg, or would he have been backed ahead of a Kubota Reinach. So that's an interesting one as well. And as much as everybody sort of jumped on the bandwagon and slammed him, we do miss Faf de Klerk when he doesn't play. From a defensive point of view, he is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I almost feel sorry for him in the fact that he's a player who's won 2 World Cup finals. He's a player that's won a British and Irish Lions series. He's done absolutely everything you possibly could in a Springbok jersey from a winning perspective. And the minute he has one off game, we want to replace him. There's just certain players that cannot seem to bank any sort of credit. And, you know, somebody the other day said, Faf needs to move on because all he can do is box kick and he can't play attacking rugby. And I blew my mind. I was like, did you not watch what this guy was doing at the Lions? Have you never watched any of his Japanese highlights? When he plays for the Springboks, he plays to a game plan, you know, and he actually had to really work on that because it wasn't his strength when he came through. He was a live wire scrum half, and he had to then sort of work on his box kicking, work on his tactical kicking, and become the scrum half that the box needed for the game plan. You know, he didn't walk in and say, listen, by the way, I think we need to box kick because that's what I'm good at. Quite the opposite, actually. He had to adapt to the game plan. Similarly, like Grant Williams has had to really bring that into his game, and he's done that really well this season. And at the end of the day, again, if your analysis is the box kick too much and that's why we're shit, then that's poor analysis. Because actually, if you looked at the incoming series, Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa, England, Australia, Wales, we statistically actually kicked the least. Fun fact. We kicked less than Ireland in both matches. And ironically, England, who lost to New Zealand twice, kicked less than New Zealand as well. So we need to get rid of that fallacy of kicking equals bad game plan. It's about the quality of the kick. It's about where you do it and how you execute it. The Boks generally don't kick once they get to the 22 statistically and from a game plan point of view. I also think we're going to need. You also need to relax a little bit about ages of players. I did a whole video last week on my personal channel and about players and when they're deemed old. And I did an orange category, which is nothing to worry about, but maybe it depends on the individual player. And I did that from 31 to 35. And basically after 35, that's where more of the questions come in. I don't understand how, as a fan base, we watched Wayne Community do what he did at the World Cup. We watched Dion Free do what he did at the World Cup. We watched Trevor Nyakane in that final, and we then decide that anybody over 30 is old. So that's also something that's irking me a little bit. So yeah, I've got a poll saying, are you happy with the squad? 88% saying yes. So those that are saying no, let me know what your thoughts are over there and why you don't like it. Let's go to some of the comments. Jason Ben saying, why the hell is Moerat in the team? Probably because Moerat has won 80% of his Springbok games. He has only lost on 2 occasions when the Boks have only lost on 2 occasions when he has started. And of the 3 games he has lost in a Springbok jersey, he played 5 minutes in one of them against France. So take away that game, he would have actually have won 12 out of 14 matches for the Boks that he has played in. If you want to know why he's there. Man has 1 bad game off the tee, which, by the way, he was absolutely superb this weekend with ball in hand. If Moerat played for France, he'd be one of the best player halves in the world. If Moerat played for New Zealand and you had a Dory Barrett or Baron Barrett or Danny McKenzie at full back and at 12, he'd be one of the best player halves in the world. If he played for any nation which had an alternative goal kicker, he'd be one of the best player halves in the world. Now, somebody was saying, yes, but this is not a South African perspective issue. But that is something we need to consider, for example. Are we playing players simply for their goal kicking ability? Can we compromise somewhere because it's worth it? As I said, do you start a Feinberg-Mngomezulu with at full back or even at 12 in the future with a Moerat at 10 because we become a different side when he plays? We really do. We score more tries. We score more points. That's not an opinion. It's a fact. You can go look at the statistics. When Moerat starts and plays for the Boks, we have a much better attacking output. It's the same thing as when Louw plays, for example, versus when he doesn't, in terms of the amount of chances created. So it's frustrating that a player who won Breakthrough Player of the Year, by the way, last year for the Boks, everybody wants to discard him. And he's a player who is, I think 26 years old. So will be like 30 the next, 27. He'll be 30 the next World Cup. So he's coming into his prime now. So I'm very glad that the coaches are back here because I think he's an important player. Redline reckons Grant should start. Vic saying, I feel bad with Mbonambi. Jay says, what's wrong with Sia and why the question mark on his cap? I'm not entirely sure what you mean there. If you're looking at my graphic, for example, there's no question mark or anything like that. So I'm not entirely sure what you mean there. Nothing wrong with Sia as far as I understand. Faf is injured. Williams is injured. We're not entirely sure. Redline saying Faf is old. Not really. He's 32. It's not that old. It's really not. You know, the annoying thing is people use age to say Faf needs to not play. He's the same age as Eben, so are you retiring Eben as well? You tell me. I'm not saying what the right answer is. I'm just saying if you're going to keep consistent with regards to ages, then if Faf is old, Eben is old, we need to move on from him. Sia is old, we need to move on from him. And Pieter-Steph the Toit is also old, we need to move on to him because he's 31 as well, which I completely disagree with. Grobbelaar says, where the hell is the best player in the UFC as picked by the UFC? Snare and the Humber, not in the squad. Not bad, fortunately. I think if you had played a full season of scrum off, you might have had a better chance, but I'm not overly surprised. I think the way, and by the way, you won't find a bigger Snare and the Humber fan than me. Actually love watching for the Lions, and I'm a Lions fan. It doesn't surprise me more if Vandenberg's been backed. I don't think the Humber's a genuine option at 10. For the box, and from a Springbok game plan, for example, I think Morne van den Berg suits it down to a T. I think he's technically fantastic. He's defensively very solid as well, which is an important part, especially when it comes to Test rugby. And I think the Humber's on the radar, but I don't think he makes it a 10, and I don't think at this stage he's going to make it as the 9. If there were more injuries, for example, I think you get a chance. And one of those things, get a chance, show your worth. But then at the end of the day, Nahamba needs to stay patient. We need to not panic. He is 25 years old, I think. So he's got many, many years ahead of him. He's just had a superb season. It takes time. Sometimes it takes time. Have another phenomenal season. Keep putting in those seasons where you cannot be ignored. That's what he's got to have to do. JP saying, can I understand this thinking that anything over 30 years old? Dixon was one of the form fly halves last year and was 38. Easy to play into mid to late 30s these days. Vic saying, if Jake White is not playing Vestris at prop, I doubt that he'll be solid against a good scrummaging team. Hank saying, Williams and Ryan are our best scrum halves. Glad to see it represented. I would have liked to see Ruan in the team. Gary saying, starting to build for next World Cup whilst retaining some experienced players to retain stability. Precisely. You cannot look at the side and say there's no use because there are young players. Ben Jason Dixon is 26 years old, not necessarily very young from being 20, but is new to the test setup. Thomas Toit still got many years ahead of him. Jan Grobbelaar's got many years ahead of him in new to the setup. Elrigh Louw is back into the setup. Ruan Nche being called up. Salmaan Moerat's not old, for example. Gerard comes not old. Jan-Hendrik is very young. You look at the backs, and Feinberg-Mngomezulu is 22. Morne van den Berg is a young player. Kurt Lawrence is still not. He's actually a lot older than we think, but he makes the next World Cup quite comfortably. So the main thing is in this 33-man squad, we've probably got maybe 6 or 7 players, maybe a bit more, maybe up to 10 who might not make the next World Cup. I'm talking a Louw, a Kubota, a Mbonambi, a Vincent Koch, possibly a Frans Malherbe, and after that, a Kolisi. And after that, question marks: does Eben make the next World Cup, for example? Does a Chisholm Colby make the next World Cup? Apart from that, everybody from an age perspective pretty much comfortably makes the next World Cup. So from that perspective, we've got majority of the squad are players who will be on the radar of 2027, whilst retaining a lot of experience to try and actually win this damn trophy, which we haven't done in a while. Spansbeck saying, sorry, but later, where is Ruas? That's a big one, isn't it? Elrigh Louw, I think, has been backed ahead of Ruas. Very interesting that Elrigh Louw came on at number 8 this past weekend. He's actually moved a lot to 7, and a lot of people are talking about the fact that maybe that's his best opportunity of making it to the box. However, he's come on off the bench at 8, and that, for me, obviously shows you that he is the other option. So, Kwagga Smith and Elrigh Louw are probably your 2 options for 8th man. I'll be interested to see who they start with. A lot of people talk about how Kwagga's only good off the bench. I thought he was actually very good against Ireland in the second test. I think that a lot of what he did went unnoticed, and I think Ireland did very well from a breakdown perspective to remove him out of the game. Australia's a whole different kettle of fish. Australia, I think you actually need him at the breakdown a lot because of the Fraser McWright, for example, option. And I think that he'll be very good against Australia. So, interesting to see what they go with there. He has to be decent on the squad because he's currently still serving a suspension. Christian saying, to be fair, I'd rather see Van Heerden in the squad than Moerat. Sure, Moerat apparently has leadership qualities, but Van Heerden has more impact on the game. Problem again is you kind of look at a four lock, side head lock versus a loose head lock. Different kind of players. Salmaan Moerat is a genuine number 4. Van Heerden plays 90% of his games at 5 and is more of that kind of player. So there are differences to the lot. Not maybe massive differences. Ruan van Heerden has played once or twice in the number 4 jersey, but really is once or twice, especially this season, has played predominantly in the number 5 jersey and has been the line caller there as well. Chris saying, people on one hand say Fafa's old, on the other hand say how much they love Kubas, who's 2 years older. You make a very, very good point. Kubas right now for me is one of the ones that I expect them to move on from. He's 34 this year. Turns 35, so he'll be 37 in the next World Cup. He could still play the next World Cup, just by the way. It's not like you look at him and you think, oh no, he's slowing down, etc., etc. So, I think that we need to start re-looking at what we consider old and what we consider young. This whole thing of we need to back the youngsters is getting a bit out of hand at the moment. Mike Silverpass says, solid squad, only real surprise for me is Vessels. Boss saying, what happened to Masuku? Is he not Bok material? I don't think that we understand how inexperienced Masuku actually is. And he looked like $1 million towards the end of the season. Masuku has effectively played half a season of international competitions worth of rugby. And was not playing before January this year. You got to look at the season, for example. He played 890 minutes this season, which is not that much, to be perfectly honest. And he's only started to play consistently this year. In fact, I think he only actually started playing this year for the Sharks in the URC and the Champions Challenge Cup. So he's a very talented player. There's no doubt about it. He looks like the part. He is on the radar, but this Bok management keep faith in their players. You've got a Mike Leibach, for example, who's been doing enough for the Boks. They've backed him. He's rewarded them. Hanji Pa's been doing this for years. And you've got such Feinberg-Mngomezulu. Now, he's almost a surprise. But the reason he's in the squad is his versatility. If Masuku could play 10, 12, 15 and had the season he had, I reckon he'd probably be in the mix. But he can't. He's a genuine number 10. So he's competing against Pollard and Leibach. Now, are you going to select him ahead of those two? Probably not. And that's why he's not there. He's on the radar. If we were to have an SA8 game and an SA8 tour, I reckon he'd probably be a starting fly half there, alongside with the likes of Jan-Hendrik. But he needs to have another season to do it again and keep banging that door down. This is where we talk about, how lucky we are with the depth, because that's who he's competing against. That's what his competition is. And you're talking about a 2-time World Cup winning fly half and a 1-time winning World Cup fly half. The next game is against Australia on the 10th. It is very early, bright and early. Set your alarms. It is going to be at 6 a.m. in the morning, so not ideal. But we will be up nice and early for that, and we'll be ready to do it. And so no Faf because he's injured. Pete says, is this the squad for the Hollywoodbets Rugby Championship or just the Oz League of the tournament? He might be resting Faf and Jasper if that's the case. So Faf has not been considered because of injury. Jasper Visa because of suspension. And no, well, yeah, this is for Australia. This is the traveling squad to Australia. There can be they can add more players to it. Gary sits is talking to about Hijan, saying, I believe you may be correct. I expect some rotation this season. Brave Stocks, I don't like what Russia is doing with our young talent. You can't keep giving them such few minutes and expect them to shine. Give them a good run, man. Completely disagree. We've seen these guys all play against Wales. We've seen these guys all play against Portugal. We've played 4 tests so far this year, and we've given out 12 debuts, I think. And now we've moved in, and all those players who've made debuts, lots of them involved in the squad. If you look at the players who made debuts this year who are going over to Australia, Ben Jason Dixon, Johan Grobbelaar, Jan-Hendrik Vessels, Feinberg-Mngomezulu, Morne van der Berg. So 5 players who made debuts this year are going over to Australia, as well as players who are not, and players that didn't go to the World Cup. On that 5, you can then add a Gerard Steenekamp, a Salmaan Moerat, a Elrigh Louw, a Thomas Toit, Updated Fassi, and I think that's it, eh? So that's an extra, almost 10 players there. 5 players, 10 players. Jan-Hendrik, Gerard, Ruan, Nortje, Elrigh Louw, Salmaan Moerat, Updated Fassi, Morne van der Berg. So 7. So call it 12 players I think 12, 13 of these players, my maths might be right, 12, 13 of these players didn't go to the World Cup. So that is more than a third of the squad are players that didn't go to the World Cup. Those are new players into the squad. So I do think it's a nice combination. And, such Feinberg-Mngomezulu has played 4 tests this year. Pieter-Steph came off the bench twice against Ireland. These players are getting game time. I think that's not entirely fair to say they're not. Jan-Hendrik Wessels, for example, got a full half of international rugby. He's 23 years old and has barely played. Such Feinberg-Mngomezulu's played officially now 142 minutes of Test rugby. That's almost 2 full games of Test rugby out of the 4 we've had so far, which 2 of them were against Ireland. So we'll see how things go at the end of the year, and we're going to do a whole breakdown, and I'll probably do it after the Rugby Championship with regards to the minutes breakdown stuff. But one thing this box squad back management do very well is they really do spread out the minutes to try and keep everybody fresh. Ian said, so pleased for Elrigh. In the 34 minutes he played against Portugal, he was the box top tackler with 6 tackles. No, my explanation here is just facts. Please tell me what Siamasuku has done to dislodge 100 power from the squad. Please tell me, over the last 3 to 4 years, what Siamasuku has done to dislodge Malherbe from the squad. I'm a massive Siamasuku fan. I wanted him at the Lions because I actually watch rugby pretty often. I challenge you, did you know who he was a year ago? Honestly, it sounds harsh. Did you know who he was a year ago? Unless you'd watched the occasional Cheetahs match. We cannot be so quick to bin players and bring players straight in, straight out. That is how we keep ruining careers, because players get backed for a game, they have an off game, and go, right, next, cheers. I've seen people trying to bin Bongi now, for example. People try to bin Pieter-Steph Toit when he was moved to flank. Remember that, by the way. Remember when Pieter-Steph Toit moved to flank and he had a couple of bad games, and everybody said, no, he needs to be dropped and not swim up material. He became the best player in the world. Siamasuku is a fantastic player. He played half a season. He has played officially 890 minutes for the Sharks. In his entire career, if you include the Cheetahs, by the way, he has played less than 1,500. Even if you include the Kings, when you go back to the Kings days when he's playing for the Kings, he's played less than 1,500 minutes in a URC or Challenge Cup, Pro 14, international competition. That is the reality. So he is still, and a lot of that, for example, I mean, you go back to the Kings, that was 1920, so he hadn't played. He made the move to the Cheetahs last year, played 4 matches for the Cheetahs last year, because they only played 4 matches in the Challenge Cup, then went to the Sharks, didn't play for half the season, started playing for the Sharks in February. Came off the bench, and then was backed as the 10 from basically March through to June. So he played March, April, May, June, 1 match in June, by the way. He played effectively 2 to 3 months of rugby. And now he's going to dislodge 100 power to Malherbe. Don't compare him to Sash Feinberg-Mngomezulu, by the way, because it's not the comparison to make. Sash Feinberg-Mngomezulu is a utility player. He can cover 10, 12, 15. If Damian Willemse was fit, Sash Feinberg-Mngomezulu wouldn't have had the minutes he's had this year. He would not have been the 23 against Ireland for both those tests. He wouldn't have had that. And I think of his 140 minutes, about 70 odd of them were against Ireland. He wouldn't have played against Ireland if Damian Willemse was fit. That's just the reality, to be perfectly honest. So Siamasuku is competing against Malherbe and Andre Pollard. If you're going to drop Malherbe after what? A dodgy URC quarterfinal, that's the only reason that you potentially look to drop him. He's had one bad game for the Stormers. Really, he had another pretty good season, and he was fantastic for us in the World Cup last year. So, if you play like him last year, and a player who's won and there's also this whole fantasy of he doesn't play well in big games is nonsense, because we've seen him play well in Challenge Cup and Champions Cup games when it's counted in playoff games. We've seen him lead Stormers to the URC title in the first season, as well as to another final, back-to-back finals, and he has been the general. So if you can do all of that, not play badly for the box, and then get binned, then I think that's pretty poor form. and thankfully the Boks management agree. So yeah, that is why. So that's you had to go with my assessment. Come with some facts about that, and we'll have a conversation. But I'm telling you, that is obviously my opinion, but logically, why Sima Masuku's not in the squad. Anyway, Evan Roos, for example, I think the issue is not so much what Evan Roos has done wrong, but more like what he's not done right. Evan Roos, for me, has had a couple of opportunities at Springbok level, and I don't think has yet been able to replicate what he does for Stormers. He's a very different, again, that kind of comes to a profile point of view. You look at, for example, Shiva Diamani, who's been one of the top players in the URC for the last 2 to 3 years. One of the top players in the country. And he doesn't get part of the Boks squad. It's about profiles. And I think Evan Roos has had the chances, has not convinced just yet. And I think Elrigh Louw came on this weekend and gave him something to think about and said, back me. And I think genuinely, I think that's what they've done. I think they've looked at him and said, okay, well, Evan Roos played started against Portugal. Then Elrigh Louw came on. Elrigh Louw had the better game. Evan Roos had a better game against Wales, but still wasn't knocking the door down. Let's try Elrigh Louw, who I think fits the more the profile. Same thing as a Ben Jason Dixon, who jumped ahead of an Elrigh Louw, who was on the radar much before Ben Jason Dixon. But again, you look at the profile and you look at the Boks want to play like this. The Boks want these type of players. Let's fill the squad. As opposed to let's just go and try, as opposed to like a Portugal where they basically have to go and pick the best players they can find and then say, shit, how do we play with these players? Japan have to do that, for example. A Japanese coach can't walk into Japan and say, right, I want to play a forwards-orientated game, slow things down, really sort of bring the physicality. They just don't have that type of player. So you look at the players they have and you adapt. The Boks, you've got far more, the top tier nations, tier 1 nations, got far more license to say, I want to play the game like this, therefore these are going to be my players. And we're even seeing how we're having to grapple between a Pollard and a Malherbe, who are different type of players, and how certain players suit a different game plan. Certain players might suit playing against a certain opposition. So that I think is an important thing, and I think that's where Evan Roos has struggled, where I don't think he's delivered to the extent they would like to have done in the Boks setup. Yeah, let's go to some more of the comment stuff like that. Colin's saying, I'll put Sasha at 15 and Liebach at 10. We'll be so dangerous. I mean, imagine this weekend, by the way, if Sasha Feinberg-Mngomezulu had started at 15 and had the kicking duties from the beginning, and Martin Liebach started at 10, we would have been talking about one of the performances from the ages about Martin Liebach, the way he controlled the game with 14 men, by the way, with half backline at stages. I mean, he lost Kirkley Orange, and he had no Nche Etzebeth. The backline at one stage was Martin Liebach, Mapimpi, Mkanya and Fassi. That was our entire backline. And look how he made it work. His kicking out of hand was really good, but because he missed 3 kicks a goal, we're now binning him as a rugby player, which is a very, very weird thing for me. Anyway, rant over. Brian says, want to know why Jason Pretorius from Lions not on the squad. He's better than Van Staden for me. I think Jason Pretorius is going to be there very soon. Again, didn't play a lot this season. Only started playing towards the back end and suddenly became really, really important and was really good. But again, you're going with the tried and tested, very different style of player, Mark Van Staden, more physical, not quite the breakdown threat that Jason Pretorius is. But I think Jason Pretorius has another season like he's just had at the Lions, and then I think he probably gets into that radar. Saying, do you see any of the under-20 junior Boks making it to the 2027 World Cup? Players like Narendra and Julius? Probably not. I think Julius probably the only one for me. Maybe a JF Van Heerden. I think he's very talented, but I don't think anybody else from a 2027 World Cup point of view. Future Boks out of that squad, I do think there are a couple. I think Batubile Tlekani, who will be playing senior rugby. He needs to lead the Sharks. There's far too many Sharks to use forwards, but he might be at lock, to be fair. Even then, they've got far too many locks. He needs to come to the Lions. I think that he will be a Springbok one day, based on what we see. I think that Julius will be a Springbok. I think that I know that Porthen is highly rated by the Bok management. JF Van Heerden looks a good player. Elsewhere, I think that I'm a big fan of Josh Bull. I think he's a nice big inside centre. It'll be interesting to see his career and how things go there. That's Lesley Bester, good player as well. primarily at 13, has had to move to the wing because of Lorenzo Julius. So I think keep an eye on him as well. But I don't think any of them will be making the 2027 World Cup. I'd be very, very surprised. Brett starts saying, we must not forget how horrible our current box was when they started out, so they're giving you guys a proper run. But I don't think, but this is the thing, they're not binning any players. It's not like players have been brought in, given a chance, and then taken straight out. Fussy is now going to, has played twice already this season. Jan-Hendrik has made his debut. Salmaan Moerat, for example, been getting a lot of opportunities. Jan Grobbelaar finally got his debut. I think, again, we got to remember that Wales test, we couldn't pick Bulls and Stormers players. Otherwise, Bulls players. Otherwise, we would have had Jan Grobbelaar would have made his debut then, I reckon. And we probably would have seen Jan-Hendrik make his debut then as well. So, yeah, I think that's probably also something quite important to remember. Johnny Pillay asking you why no Faf, Moody and Kitsoff all injured. Christian says, I think Ruas plays too much for himself and not so much for the team. He had white line fever, he must tackle and smash rucks, and a team player make a good carry and retain the ball. Yava saying, Faf was bad, surprised though, great team overall. Johnny's saying, it's time for next era of box. Rusty did similar after the last World Cup. Yeah, but remember after the last World Cup, he had a year off of rugby. We didn't have any rugby in 2020. So that is the reason why we didn't get a chance to really rotate. Plus, we had a British Irish Lions series to prepare for, so it wasn't a normal World Cup cycle. This is far more of a normal World Cup cycle. And we're only 4 tests into the year, people, of which 2 of them were against Ireland. So we effectively only played 2 tests, which we could rotate and try things. But bugger that. What are you going to experiment against Ireland? No. We won the first test, lost the second test, very frustrating. Now we move into the Rugby Championship. I want to win this Rugby Championship. If I haven't mentioned that before, once or twice. Frosty reckons Portland has the best chance from under 20. Faf is indeed injured. And Ryan Fulton saying, good squad, but are they mentally fired up? Well, I hope so. And we'll have to wait and see. I think the main thing is for Rassie Rasmus to say to the older guard, listen, we've got these younger players, and we've got younger players in every single position. So the minute you start looking like you don't want to be here and that you're going to switch off, we can replace you. And I think that's the main thing. Look at how Jesse Creel and Kanye are playing at the moment, because those two are fighting tooth and nail for that jersey. Maximo Pimpy was kind of falling down the wayside, goes and scores a hat-trick. You've got players like a Pieter-Steph Toit. He'll be very aware of the fact that Ben Jason Dixon is after his jersey. Kolisi will know that people are looking at him, is he the future? And all of a sudden so he has to step up, and he has stepped up. The props, for example, will know these players are after them. So I think that's the main thing, is that the best way to keep the older, more experienced players fired up is you've got to sit there saying, the second we see you slacking off, we've got youngsters that can replace you, and we do have youngsters that can replace them. We're going to wrap up there, people. Thank you very much. Always been a fun chat, and we will be doing more live streams throughout the week. We'll probably do one on Thursday. But in terms of content to come, we have got a winners and losers video from the squad, which will come out tomorrow. We're going to be doing an Australian prediction, where we think what the team might be for both tests, test 1, test 2. Obviously, next week we'll do an official prediction. And then any other news that comes across the channel. People, please do smash like on the video, by the way. We're doing a whole bit of analytical dive, and it'd be nice to see a lot more people sort of liking the video, because that is something that people just tend not to do in the live streams. You get too caught up in that, so please do like the video on the way out. It's something very small, but it helps us a lot, so appreciate that. And we will continue our conversation on Thursday, so if you have any more input, put that in the comments. We do read the comments, not all of them obviously, but we try to read as much as we can and take all your feedback in, look at some of the points people have been made, and bring that into discussion in the future as well. So also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. As you can see, we are on the road to 75,000 subscribers. Got to the 70,000 a couple of weeks ago, looking to try and get to the 75 by the end of the Rugby Championship, maybe even 80,000 by the end of the year. So please do join that journey and subscribe if you are new. And people, keep well,